Hey, and welcome to the Mountain Cat Guitars podcast, where we discuss all things guitar related. My name is Doug Meyer, owner of Mountain Cat Guitars, and I've been buying and selling guitars professionally for over 25 years. From boutique guitar and amp builders, vintage guitar dealers and experts, guitar repairmen and luthiers, retailers, manufacturers, and of course guitar players, we talk to the people who buy, sell, play, and of course obsess over the things we love most, guitars. Hi, this is Doug Meyer from Mountain Cat Guitars, and welcome to the Mountain Cat Guitars podcast. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Labella Strings, the finest handmade strings in the world, and Bob's Used Helicopters. I'd like to give a shout out to Andrew Follett, our buddy on the internet who is a big fan of the podcast. Hello, Andrew. How are you? And today's guest is Shira Goldberg from Retrofret Guitars in Brooklyn, New York.
Hi.
How are you, Shira?
I'm alright, how are you?
Thank you for coming. It's Super Bowl Sunday, so Shira gave up her Super Bowl Sunday morning to be with us today.
Huge football fan. I'd normally be.
Are you really?
No.
No, you're not. So you never know. Because musicians are weird. A lot of musicians don't care, and some do. Like, I don't care.
Some do. My dad is a musician, and he loves football, and I never understood it.
Yeah, most musicians I find don't, but then you find people who are rabid about it, and you're like, really? Like,
musicians in sports. Next on this podcast.
Right. That's actually a good one. And you're like, we should find out.
I'm not really prepared to handle that subject.
Me either. We would need some information. We would need some data.
We need some research, I think.
But that is an interesting thing. I never really thought about it. But,
an idea is.
Because everyone I told we were going to be here today is like, cool, I don't care about football. You know, like.
Yeah, no, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't care about football. Although I might be going to a Super Bowl party.
Right, what the Super Bowl parties are fun.
Oh, for the snacks.
Right. Yeah. There's sex at those?
There's snacks.
Oh.
Snacks.
This started badly already. I thought you were just joking.
I'm talking about buffalo dip.
Because I was going to say chicken wings. I thought you just went to this odd place right off the bat.
What kind of parties do you think I go to?
Yeah, I was
Don't
like,
answer
whoa.
that question.
I was like, this is Brooklyn, you know.
No.
Wow, they're pretty progressive out here.
Super Bowl
Snacks.
party with snacks.
Right. Yeah, I was like, wow, Super Bowl parties. I've been going to shitty
call
ones
them
then.
hors d'oeuvres or even appetizers.
Right. Snacks. You said it right then. It was me.
Yeah.
That was totally
I'm sticking
me.
with it. Snacks.
Yeah, I just thought you were just like going on a random
How many
tangent.
times can I say snacks?
Anyhow, we digress terribly. So you work at Retrofret Guitars, we know.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to how you actually came to work there. But you're not from New York City. You're from.
I'm from upstate New York.
Where about?
Originally, I'm from a town called Accord, New York, which is in Ulster County. I was born in Kingston.
Oh, so it's not that far from there.
No, about 2 hours.
Right, and
Yeah.
that's near where you grew up.
Yeah, the Catskills and the Catskill
Oh,
Mountains.
so it's not upstate like by Syracuse or by Buffalo.
No. Although, it's still pretty rural up there.
Yeah,
so.
Woodstock's rural. The second you get outside of it, you know.
Yeah, I grew up not in one of the, there's those towns upstate that have like a main street, and that's not really where I was. My town has a main street, but I didn't live anywhere
so you grew up
near
in the woods.
it. Like, I grew up a couple of farms down from
That's cool.
there. Not on a farm.
But in that kind of
On a former farm.
That's cool though.
Yeah, it was interesting. I grew up, and it was kind of before the internet took over everybody's life officially.
Right. So,
I grew up in the woods.
Right. Me too. But I'm older than you are. I assume by a lot. And I always consider we were the last people because I didn't get a cell phone until I was an adult.
Be the last.
Right. You might.
Generation of that.
Right. So I didn't have a cell phone until I was like, probably almost 30.
Yeah,
Maybe.
my first
Other people
official adult, I have a phone now, phone was a cell phone. And it was just around the time when everyone started to get them. Right. For real. I had some friends in high school who had them, but it was not the norm.
Right.
Anyhow, yes, it was rural, and my dad also had a huge record collection. He still has a huge record collection, so I grew up just in the woods with a lot of records, a lot of instruments.
Yeah, that's what we did. For fun, we went in the woods, and when we got old enough to drink, we'd get beer and go in the woods.
Yeah.
And we knew the woods near our house, and we'd hang out. And then eventually got cars, but before that, it was always hanging out on a dead-end street somewhere. That was That's how people grew up.
No sidewalks.
No,
We need
like we would just
sidewalks.
find a dead end street where you could go
Yeah.
listen to music at the back of your car.
Yeah.
Like you open the trunk and you could hear the speakers. Did you do that?
Yeah.
That was like the best night ever, you know, like
Yeah.
hanging out, you know, like doing what you're doing, like hanging out like on an abandoned street. Like that was the best place.
I mean, I think that also being, I don't know, everyone has a different experience growing up, but I think that my experience being in such a rural place and kind of having that ability to be completely solitary in certain ways really encouraged like my creativity, and because I would just come up with things to entertain myself.
Right. That's kind of true, because people don't have to do that now. Well, they have to just pick up a phone and they can entertain
it would seem that way.
It's entertaining, but we did the same thing. We started playing guitar like 12 or 13, and that was it.
I didn't start playing guitar until I was like 19.
Yeah, a lot of people start a little later. But we started the second we get one. You know, like as soon as we're old enough to get them, we got them, and that was pretty much what we did from then on.
Yeah, that's how you entertained yourself.
Yeah, we'd find somewhere we can go and we would just play Pink Floyd songs or whatever we were into when we were kids. But like, you know, we'd get
your
a bunch of
instrument
beer
and play it, and
go play.
Do. Yeah,
in the woods. You know, like we go to a lake. You know, make a little fire
I
and
think
play
people
music.
still have that. No, I hope.
But they're probably on the phone half the time, going, "Oh, let's take a picture."
They're still getting that. Yeah, maybe there's more documentation.
It sounds like, you know, people in the South or in the middle of the country, you see, like, you know, people seem to still hang out at lakes and things like that. So if you play guitar, you probably bring your guitar.
You're more influenced by outside people, like what FOMO, as they say, like wanting to be where other people are or know what people are doing, or stuff like that.
Because music back then, even there was only one record store in my town.
Yeah,
and there were two kids who played guitar.
Yeah.
So you had
I was actually okay. So as far as music, I was really, really lucky growing up with my access to music in a time where not all music was accessible the way it is now. Because not only did my dad have a gigantic record collection, like I'm talking like 70,000 records. Like he's a very serious record collector. There are rooms dedicated to it in the house. In the house, yeah.
That's awesome.
But also, my parents run a DJ business, so even all the new stuff they get too.
Oh wow!
So there was this huge back catalog, and then everything that was like coming out, they'd be sure to have it because they need to have whatever the latest.
Whoa, that's cool.
Pop, anything.
And they would go DJ where? Like parties?
In the Catskill hotels.
Right.
Hotels were like a big.
But then it was probably all
big
DJs,
part of my life growing up. The Catskill hotels were a big part of my life growing up. Yeah, because that's what that's what they were doing. My dad always played bass in show bands, and they also ran a DJ business. My parents would
That's right, you forget about the Catskills and the whole Borscht Belt thing.
Yeah, the Borscht Belt, for real. That's really where I came up. And, they would play like, Happy Hour in the Lounge. Or
it was by the 70s or 80s.
This was like the 80s, yeah, the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah, so that was all pop music back then, probably.
Yes, but then they'd also, it would be an older crowd.
Right, I was just going to say, probably older people, so you have to play
so there was a
stuff
lot
they
of,
could dance to.
You did hear a lot, I did hear a lot of that older stuff growing up in that setting as well.
That's very cool.
So I have like a pretty deep...
I used to go to those hotels.
I got really into jazz at like an oddly young age.
Really?
Yeah, not to be like, oh my god, I'm into that. But like, I just was like, I was super, super into it, like in a weirdly obsessive way, like when I was like 9.
Oh, Jesus.
I actually met Dizzy Gillespie once.
Whoa.
You want to hear that? Should I tell that story? This is the right.
They want to hear that story.
The story of when I met Dizzy Gillespie. So when I was a kid, I was oddly upset. I went through my hard bop phase, right? Everybody does that when they're 9. And
you're 39.
I mean, because I was.
That's heavy music for a kid.
I was in the woods. Yeah, but I was in the woods.
In the woods, listening to bop.
I just had shelves full of records and endless amounts of like curiosity. So I just got into some very weird music, and so I got really into like Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie.
Well, that's heavy for a 9-year-old.
Yeah, I know. So, and I also started playing the saxophone. That was the other thing. I started playing the saxophone when I was 9.
Trying to play that music?
I had, listen,
that's heavy for a 9-year-old.
Big dreams. So, my dad had he had written some reviews, some music reviews for the, like concert reviews for the Poughkeepsie Journal. And he managed to get a press pass because Dizzy Gillespie played at the Bardavon in like, I was a kid, so like 91 or something. And we went to the Bardavon. I saw Dizzy Gillespie play, and then he like took me back and I like met Dizzy Gillespie.
Whoa.
I met Dizzy Gillespie, I was 9. And he actually gave me the best piece of advice that I have carried with me to this day. He was like, hey kid, like really grizzled, like, hey kid, play any instruments? And I was like, yeah, I play the saxophone. And he's like, I got one word for you. And I was like, what is it? I'm like hanging on to every word. And he goes, practice. And I was like,
Done.
okay. All right. Okay. And this was like Dizzy Gillespie, he died like only less than a year after that. So this was like 91, I want to say.
That's heavy.
Yeah. Isn't that heavy?
That's crazy.
And then I, because they assigned, like I started playing the saxophone, and at school they assigned you a certain amount of practice time per day. I think it was like a half an hour.
Right.
And after that, I was like, that's not enough.
That's not gonna be good.
I started practicing like an hour at least a day at that point. And yeah, that had a big impact on me.
That's huge. But that is the common thing that when you really talk about people who are really that great. The one common thing you always find is they would just never stop practicing.
Yeah, it's true. The people who are really, really good.
John Coltrane, they say
really,
never stop.
Yeah, it's
he would take it to the
so
bathroom
true.
with him.
Every good musician that I have ever met, and at this point I've met a lot of them,
yeah.
they all practice. They all practice.
It's not magic. Like Hendrix wasn't magic. It's a lot of practice and some magic.
I practice. One of the best guitar players I know works at Retrofret, and that's George Aslander. Hey, George. And he gets up in the morning and practices like, I think every day.
I did that for years. Well, I would go to Chelsea and it opened at 11. I'd go there at 8.
It's very inspiring.
Play for 3 hours and play all day, because in between customers you play.
Yeah, and there's that.
And then go to a gig.
Specific to
and I ruined my
working
hand
in a guitar store type of playing, which is almost like a mindless wander.
But we would
you never really choose.
If customers
came
in, we would just ignore them.
I actually find that type of playing in the guitar store, which I do, I mindlessly will just pick things up and start to play them.
Or you want to try a guitar. You're like, oh, there's no one here. I want to try that guitar
to see what it's like, right? And it actually disrupts my practicing patterns a little bit because it shortens my attention span a little bit, because I'll pick up the guitar and I'll just kind of wander around on it. I'll never truly settle on a song. Right. I'll never really get through a song. There's always other stuff going on, and then I'll kind of wander away from it.
It's like people who practice while watching television.
Then I'll go to practice at home, and I'll find myself starting to wander away, and I'll have to. That's something I have to like work on. Is like focus on it, stick with it, because like I have so many miles of road of me wandering around a guitar store, just picking up random guitars and playing, 2 bars and putting it down, and then like
everyone has their like trying a guitar riff. Everybody has their thing they do when they try a guitar. Yeah. Like, Walter Becker, I could almost play his riff.
I go straight pentatonics. I like to be a little cheesy when I'm trying.
But everybody has a thing that they do, that they want to hear if that guitar does something or something. Like Dickie Betts would always do this one thing where you would just go.
Depending on the guitar. Oh yeah, that's all. That's actually the only way I listen to anything. I just one.
But Walter and Bob would sit there and do this thing with the knobs on any electric guitar. They both do. You'll see, but when Bob's here, he'll do it.
Yeah.
But Walter would always do it. Put it in the middle, and he'd start to just roll down on things.
Yeah.
And if cool stuff wasn't happening, he'd be like, "This is not a good guitar."
Sure. Yeah.
Because there's all those guys in the '60s didn't have effects.
Well, he knows what he's looking for.
They had these knobs.
He knows what he does more.
Yeah, but those guys know, like Dickie Betts will just go.
I have different things that I do on the guitars. Like if it's a Dreadnought, I'll start
playing some
guitar, country music, whereas
or we're just doing
it's like if it's an electric guitar.
Yeah, if it's a Martin, you're gonna play bluegrass, or is it Gibson?
Yeah, or just like I don't know. I get a little more electric.
Right.
But yeah, I do.
Everybody has their thing.
I do have a few cliches that I'll.
Because if you hang out with somebody long enough, you start hearing their thing. Like Danny had a thing, and then we learned Danny's thing.
Oh yeah.
Danny and Chelsea played the same riff every time he would try a guitar. It was an Albert King riff. So we learned Danny's riff. It was some riff he took from Albert King. It was a good riff.
Sure.
But he played it every single time.
I just make my way up a pentatonic scale just to see what that sounds
But
like.
you could play the Danny riff, or someone had it nailed.
Yeah.
And then the second Danny would pick up a guitar, someone would play the riff to screw up his head.
Yeah.
Dude, no, I can't play the riff. You just fucked me
Other
up.
people were playing the riffing.
You're doing it to fuck with them a lot.
Yeah. Someone could play it perfectly.
Yeah.
It was like Jackson or somebody. Someone could play it exactly the way he played it, and he played it exactly the way Albert King played it. So basically everybody's played that riff.
Sure.
But Danny played it really well. He did really great vibrato. That's all he worked on his entire teenage years.
Yeah.
He never learned to play a chord, which is the oddest thing.
Huh.
So he could just play
Me
Albert
neither.
King, Otis Rush. Is that right? But he couldn't play a G chord. He couldn't play a chord.
Okay.
But he could play
That's
lead guitar
amazing.
So how did that happen?
He thinks of it like a mono,
He just wanted to be Otis
like
Rush.
one note at a time. Was he even playing anything in harmony, like
No, he just played
guitar-monies?
just blues riffs that he got from Buddy Kai. He was a blues fanatic, and he could play pick up guitar and sound just like any of those guys.
So having come from playing an instrument for so long that is one note at a time to playing the guitar, it's a very different experience.
Right.
And it feels like maybe he just kind of has that singular one note at a time mindset.
Or he thought B.B. King couldn't play chords, but you could, fine. He just didn't like to. Because B.B. didn't play chords.
Here's the thing, there's no rules. Just do the thing if you want to.
Yeah, that was we just found that to be the honest thing, so we started teaching him chords. You had to teach, he didn't know how to play a G chord.
I'm still trying my best.
Well, you don't want to but he didn't even, we just found it to be the strangest thing. How did you learn how to play guitar like that? You never decided to figure out what the chords were. He's like, oh.
He never had to. He didn't have to. Turns out he never had to.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I don't think he played in a band. You'd be like, dudes, I only play leads.
He never needed to do it.
What are you talking about? Play the chords. I don't know any chords. I just play lead. So the rest of the time I just hang out over by the bar. Then tell me when I bust a solo.
Yeah, there you go.
But he was a singer too, so he probably just sang.
Right. Well, that's a legitimate thing. That's a lot of coordination.
Yeah, maybe we're just giving him a hard
to play
time.
a chord
We
and
gave
sing
him
the
tons
song
of shit
and the
about
lead
it.
at the same time. Dang.
Yeah.
That's a hard one to pull off.
I think we were just giving him shit because we like to give him shit.
Who doesn't?
Right. Especially he was our boss, so you had to bust his balls. But I'm sure you work with Peter.
I'm very respectful of my boss. Possibly watching this morning.
Right. Well, hopefully he will watch. So we'll talk about him in a moment too. All right. So how did you wind up in New York City?
Okay, so I wanted to be where the action was, and I went to school at SUNY Purchase, which is in Westchester, so only about 40 minutes up from the city.
Yeah, it's not far from where.
And I went to the music school at SUNY Purchase, and had a lot of friends and a lot of people. Yeah, I would come to the city, and I already, by the time I graduated, was getting involved in playing in New York.
Down here, right?
Yeah, and I'd play at the old sidewalk scene and the old sidewalk cafe.
Well, it was an older scene than yours, even. We played there when it first opened.
This was the early 2000s, so
right.
yeah.
I was there way before that. I was there in the late 90s.
Oh, dang.
Right when it opened, it just opened.
Okay.
I used to play there.
I wasn't even playing guitar until the year 2000, I want to say 2001.
Right.
Yeah, something like that.
The sidewalk was great. So everyone just hung out. I used to play there every New Year's Eve for years and years.
Everyone. I used to go to that. I used to go to the that open mic.
Latch's thing. Yeah, that was a famous thing.
Yeah, and Latch, and I got my first gig in New York. There, I played that story. I played that open mic.
And he gives you a gig,
and
right?
he was like, "Does she get the gig?"
He was a great guy.
He was a great guy.
He would play piano with us.
Champion people.
Yeah, he was so cool.
Which I thought was the best.
Yeah, he loved our band. Our singer was really
Latch,
good friends.
if you're watching.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in years.
Much love
but
and respect. He's in Edinburgh right now, I think, or he moved to Scotland.
Did he really?
Yeah, he moved to Scotland.
Oh shit!
I'm friends with him on Facebook.
I'm not, because I didn't spoke to him much after.
I haven't talked to him in a long time. Maybe I'll reach out to him.
But we played there so often. He used to sit in and play piano with us.
Sure.
You know, we knew our songs
Yeah.
by then. You'd be like, I'll play piano. I was like, cool. But
What a cool cat. That was a great scene, though.
That was a great scene.
That was
I
like
used
New
to
York
come
to East
down.
Village, when the East Village was the East Village.
Oh
You would go
man,
to the
I remember the
sidewalk.
East Village. Oh, R.I.P. So
I know, it's so sad.
yeah, so I used to go to that while I was still at Purchase, and
And then at that point, you're like, I
yeah,
gotta
and
move
then
here.
you know, I graduated. A bunch of my friends were moving down to the city. I moved here, and my first apartment was with my friend Ben Kalb, who is a fantastic cellist, and he was actually the original cellist for Spring Awakening. That was all going down at that time. That was like before that was on Broadway.
Right.
And you know, that's how I ended up in New York.
And then how quickly did you get a job in a guitar shop?
Not that long after,
Okay.
actually. It was pretty random. So I had a lot of background as a musician in certain ways.
Right.
I'd been playing guitar for a couple of years at this point. And also I knew a lot about signal flow because my parents ran a DJ business.
Right.
And I
I was
had
like,
set
how
up
does signal flow?
remotely for like weddings and stuff like that. I had set
Oh,
up
wow.
so many like different like little sound systems.
Oh,
And
so
things
you were
like that.
perfectly equipped for it.
So I understood that aspect of
Right.
it. Actually, that's really the part that I
Gotcha.
came to First Flight to do. So like
Oh, is that right?
I basically just needed a job. I hit the streets. I walked into a bunch of different places. I also had a bunch of retail experience
Oh, so you were
randomly
golden,
because
right?
I had worked back upstate at a costume shop.
Oh, wow.
I worked at a costume shop.
That's interesting. I'm
In
sure there's a
Kingston.
whole podcast in there.
Yeah, and that was a whole other experience. We used to like rent out the costumes, like the Easter bunny costume and Santa, and all, like a leopard. This crazy lady used to come in and she
I'm sure the
used to
stories. Yeah.
want to rent the leprechaun costume and like not for St. Patrick's Day, but
I'm sure there's a whole thing
that's a
there.
whole
Yeah.
that's a whole other podcast.
Which I'd really like to know about that.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. But
A little kooky.
so yeah, so they needed
Oh,
somebody.
so you had it all. You had retail
I
experience.
had
You had
enough
to put it all together.
pieces of experience.
Getting your first.
Hello, this is Daniel. Sorry to interrupt. Our main audio cuts out for about 6 minutes, but then it comes back on, so stay tuned and listen to Doug and Shira talking about getting your first job.
Getting your first job, like especially if that's what you want. Like when I moved to New York, I wanted to work in a guitar shop. I'd worked at them already, but very
Yeah.
briefly. And when I was young, and when I moved to New York, it was basically 48th Street and a couple other little shops around. But
Yeah.
the guys had been working there forever. No one
Sure.
left those jobs ever.
Yeah,
You know.
I didn't know anything about
Any of that. Right?
any of it. I didn't know anything about anything. I just was going into different places. I filled out a bunch of different, I was hostessing jobs and
Right.
whatever, like just a job. I needed a job. So, so I ended up going into First Flight and I met the manager there and I said, are you looking to hire somebody? And he was like, actually, we might be. So like, give up, what's your resume? And I gave him my resume and he was like, oh, you have experience with live sound. We actually are looking for somebody to deal with some of our smaller inventory. They had a whole wall of like HOSA, the connectors and
Oh, that's
adapters,
right. I remember all that.
XLR, converters and things like that.
Wow.
So, just,
Right. It's perfect.
that stuff. And like I did and I also done inventory stuff, like I worked
Right.
that, so I got the job. And then I worked there for a long time.
How long?
I worked there for 8 years.
That's a long time.
I learned everything I know. I learned, I'm still learning everything I know.
Yeah.
That's
But you got to start learning someplace, right?
I learned a lot there. I learned a
8
lot
years,
about
and that's a real guitar
business.
shop in New York City.
And
it's happening.
and Dan Wallach, the owner, taught me.
He's a nice guy.
He is a nice guy.
So
And,
not that long. At our last guitar show, he was there.
I think he taught me one of the most important things that I have brought with me through this business, which is how to look at a guitar, how to look at anything that you intend, that you're looking to possibly purchase. I think a lot of people will look at an instrument with what and they'll see what they want to see, because that's what they want. They want it to be.
There's a lot of that in our business.
There is a lot of that.
You know, there's a lot. You'll hear. You could suggest something to somebody, and you go, "Oh, do you hear that?" And they go, "Yeah." You're like, but do you really hear it? Like,
do you really hear it? Do you really see it?
Because hearing is so subjective. Seeing is something. You could see something. You could see that there's something. But do you hear the difference in these two sets of pickups? It's really subjective because I don't think people hear the same.
Yeah, and also people will talk stuff up.
Right.
For various reasons.
Well, if someone hands you a guitar and they say it's $100,000, you're expecting it to be amazing.
Sure.
And maybe you hear it as amazing.
But
you know?
I think the thing that he really taught me from the get-go is that when you look at it, you have to take your own experiences and kind of tune out what other people might tell you about it. And then you can take it to people whose opinion you do trust to independently verify. And this is still what I do, right? So like I'll look at something and, you know, it doesn't matter that the listing said that it was from this year, or that it's all original, or that the finish is not oversprayed, or any of that. You know, I'll look at it as if I'm seeing it for the first time in like a vacuum. Just like no preconceived. I really try to like clear any preconceived notions.
How many times does somebody burn a guitar and they say, "Oh, this is oversprayed"?
Focus on the thing.
And you're like, you know, like,
I mean, people have said so many.
Right.
At this point, people have tried to convince me of this or that or this or that with their instruments, and it really is. I like to have my own independent. Like I am looking at it. He calls it actually guitar forensics. You know, I am looking at it as if I'm trying to recreate that story
right.
of what has happened to this instrument.
Well, we were just doing that with that,
not
right?
happened. Right, that's
right, I just saw it in
a
action.
great example.
Right. Well, you were really doing that, you know, so
So
that's
so
really
I
interesting.
learned
because we did it with
there.
this, with Cobra. Yeah, I bought this not that long ago.
Yeah, this is a great guitar.
Yeah, and Cobra's been working on it, but like it was that thing. It was floating around New York for a second. No one was buying it because it's got a stock break.
Sure, it
but
needs to be the right person.
It needs some love. You know, like I love guitars like this.
Yeah.
You know, but like a D'Angelico like that. You know, from 36, that John D'Angelico made it.
Yeah.
You know, like, and everyone was passing on it. You know, Cobra called me up. He's like, "Buy this, I'll restore it for you." I was like, "Done."
With great power comes great.
But this has a lot of like weird stuff. We can talk about it later. But
sure.
Like, all that kind of strange stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what went on here? Why did it go on?
Right, and
you know,
then
like,
as
trying to retrace people's like.
It is something that you know what it's supposed to look like because you've seen it so many times before.
Well, that's the only real thing.
That's
like, you have to see them.
That's why the experience will teach you.
Right. That's the only thing. No one wants to work in a guitar shop for 20 years to get that experience. They just want to open a vintage guitar shop.
Right.
You know, like think of how many blackguards has Peter seen now. So you start to see the patterns.
How many at this point?
Right. But imagine how many he's seen.
Sure.
You know, so those guys like Mojo, those guys, you start to see the patterns.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you know, those guys know at the end of 53 that they stopped doing this to that. Like little things.
There's specific regarding
those guys
history.
Are down,
right?
You know, like
there's like what you can find.
And you can read it in a book.
There's the catalog, right?
Right. But you can read it, like everyone reads it, but there's no.
Then there's just certain things.
Mojo said that they took apart any guitar that came in back in when they had like St. Mark's Music, all those old stores, and they were just learning that any guitar that came in, they just took it apart and looked inside of it. You know, like I never didn't do that much at Chelsea because I was too busy. You know, like. I mean, we were busy, you know, so you take it apart to make sure it was
I'll
right.
take a guitar apart.
But then,
I have to see what's under. I got to see what's in that neck pocket.
Right, that's how you learn.
I need to see that.
Because
I
everyone
need to
claims
see that TD if you're gonna.
Right.
I want to see it.
There's a lot to these things.
You know?
Right, when you open up a guitar with one of those guys, you know, I used to open them up with G. Smith, you know, like you'd be like, oh look at this thing. If you don't see this, it's bullshit. You know, like he's like, oh, and this, you know why this is like this, and you'd be like, whoa, you know, like you can see. He always did it.
Yeah.
You know, part, but those guys just knew. Like, they saw more stuff. Because stuff was everywhere. You know, we didn't get blackguards every day at Chelsea. You probably get blackguards, you know, at least once a week, once every 2 weeks.
We try to always have a nice selection.
Yeah, a bunch now. You know, like, and you guys are juniors like crazy. I bought 2 juniors for you recently.
I actually just sold one of them.
So you have some nice ones.
We do. That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing. You guys only have nice ones.
Yeah. Well, I'm not opposed to a player guitar.
Right,
but it's got to be.
But if it's a player, I bought 2 player juniors from you guys. They were the 2
it's
best
gotta
juniors
be-
ever. You know,
It has to be accurately represented
and a good guitar.
and a good guitar.
Right.
Like
But
a
those
real
are-
player.
Right.
Like
But
a
I
joy to
bought
play player.
Both of those, and they were great.
Yeah.
I just put them side on. Peter's like, yeah,
Good, I'm
that's a
glad.
good guitar. You know,
Yeah.
cool. I'll take it. I got it.
I'm glad you like those.
Awesome.
guitars.
They're
Yeah,
amazing.
they're great guitars.
Yeah. I just did a record and like I just used one of those, throwing everything. Sometimes a junior just is like that, or even
Sure.
like a Esquire. Some guitars are just like that. Like
Pretty straightforward.
they just work on everything.
Yeah.
You know, just you can't hit a bad note on them. They just sound great through any amp. They never go out of tune. You know, like
Yeah.
everything's happening great. You know, like and they're not
I mean,
all
it's a
like that.
simple, thought out, well built
Right.
design.
Exactly, like a junior or an Esquire, or basically the same
both.
concept, sort
Yeah.
of. You know, like by different,
Well, I
coming
mean,
from different
string
angles,
through the
right? And neck
bridge,
bolt on, but you know, it's a one pickup
like that makes a
guitar.
pretty big.
Put a
difference
thin
in the
finish
physics,
on
right.
it, and it'll probably be good. You know,
Yeah.
like you know, very vague, but you know, it's a simple thing. It's a piece of wood. Get a good piece of wood.
And that's what every guitar is. And people get very, listen, I buy into the grandiose fantasy of the guitar. And I also understand at the same time that it is a wooden box with
Some
metal
stuff
strings
on it,
on it.
right?
That's it. That's what it is.
Well, you
It's
could
just
go
a
either
metal
way.
box.
Some mornings it's not
Metal
that.
strung
Some
box.
mornings it is that. Some days you wake up and you're just like, whoa, you know, guitars are these things. And sometimes you're like, it's just a
Well,
bunch of stuff. You know,
I think I've always seen the guitar from the way I first approached it, which is I didn't start playing the guitar because I wanted to be like a guitar hero. I started playing the guitar because I wanted something I could use to write songs,
Right.
which is still a huge, the main part of my relationship with the
Right.
guitar is as a tool. I think it is something that is a means to an end. It's not the thing unto itself. Like the guitar
Right.
doesn't write the song, you
Right.
write the song. The guitar can
It
help
can
you on your
create-
journey and helps
Right.
you with that
That's
creation.
what Neil
It's
Young
a vessel
said.
of creation,
Like every
right?
guitar has a song in it.
Yeah.
So you ever notice like some guitars just pick up and you automatically you just make a chord and it's a song. It just starts flowing through you. Boom, it's happening. And you keep
Yeah.
those guitars around. And some guitars that don't do it, but it could be an electric guitar just plugged into an amp you never plugged it into, and it just makes a sound, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden something starts happening.
The
You're like,
new-
"Where's a pen?
the novel,
This is happening."
it's inspiring.
Right.
Yeah,
Some guitars
totally.
do that, so those are the guitars you buy. You know,
Yeah.
and that happens in a guitar shop. You know,
I think that's a big part of
that's what Joe
songwriting.
Perry
is
said
trying
about why
to
you
have,
keep
like,
so
a
many guitars
novel
around.
idea.
Everyone's like, "Oh, why do you have so many guitars around?" He's like, "You could just pick one up and plug it into an amp and hit a chord, and it's a song."
Because they're different. That's how I ended up with like 20 guitars too.
That's how it happens,
Because
right.
you know,
It's like, "Oh, so many guitars."
well, you gotta have one for like to sound sweet, and then you gotta
Uh-huh.
have one to sound crunchy, and then you need one that's
Yeah,
like
it's blue.
it's blue, you need one that's red.
And I don't have any blue ones, and then you need a
need
lighter
one
blue one, and then a black
That's
one.
an 8-string bass for some reason.
Right, because you never know. Right, that's what winds up
I
happening.
know. when you're gonna need it.
Yeah, they'll go like, "Why do you need so many
I
guitars? Why
did
don't you just
write a
have
song
one?"
on my 8-string bass.
Right,
so.
that's why people started playing in other tunings, or people buy a tenor
Yeah,
guitar.
exactly.
Or you buy a
'Cause it's
mandolin.
You need sometimes with that you do need a novel.
Something different. You put your
Something
fingers in the same
new.
place, but it sounds different.
Right.
You
Because it's
Nashville
really easy to
string a
fall
guitar.
into that rut.
You know, like you just Nashville string
Yeah, Nashville.
something.
I've been
And
thinking about stringing up some of my guitars.
it's
Nashville.
really cool because it's that
should
thing. You
do
play a
that.
G chord, but it sounds completely
should do
different.
that.
You write a song.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that's why, you know, you keep so many, that's what I discovered when I was young, like I discovered other tunings. And I started writing, it was
Oh,
just
yeah.
so interesting that you would just put your fingers where they usually are, but now it's something totally different. Sometimes you'd hit something,
Drop that D and
boom,
all of a sudden
song.
I'm like,
right, there's a song.
baddest
But then you got to play
badass
these
in
things
the West.
live, and you need 40 guitars because they're all in different tunings, and that some have capos.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I was playing in a band, I was writing all these songs in different tunings. I was playing clubs all the
Yeah.
time. So like,
that's the problem.
it's like 3 different tunings. Some had capos on them, so you couldn't do that in
Be
between
more
songs.
boring.
I had to start getting rid of them all
Yeah.
and putting like, I gotta learn that song. And
Well, that's why these guys will have like 15 guitars backstage.
right. What's what happened to Joni Mitchell?
Sure.
Every song's
yeah.
in a different
Well, she
tuning.
had the robot
At the
tuning
end,
guitar. We like
right.
to talk about the
But-
guitar on this podcast.
She's
She's
talk
like,
about anything.
I give that to her. I
Yeah.
give that to
Right,
her.
she's so cool she can get away with that, right?
Well, not even she can get away with it. It was
She
that was
needed it.
designed. Yeah, she needed it.
Well, she started touring because of that
She
thing.
needed it.
Right.
You know,
You should
I
bring
give it to
15
her.
Martins.
I also am somebody who, like, I'm open to the idea of your favorite guitar not being my favorite guitar.
Right.
There's so many. There's a guitar out there for everybody. So like, I would never tell someone that their guitar is stupid. Like in like I would never be like, your guitar's dumb. I hate your guitar.
Well,
I'd be like, I hate that guitar
Right,
for
you would
me.
think it.
I wouldn't do it, but I would never like say
Right.
that the guitar that you've picked out for yourself that you love.
That's different. That's like telling someone their significant other is dumb or whatever.
Yeah,
You know,
like
that you don't do. You might
love it.
think it, you know, but you don't say it.
Sure, I try to be
don't say.
open-minded to the idea that there's
Well,
something.
yeah.
There's a song.
Because some of the best guitar players I know have 2 or 3 crappy guitars they've had their whole life. You know, whatever Squires that they change the pickups in.
Yeah.
They're professional guitar players.
Sure.
These guitars work on tour,
Sure.
and they like them, and they make them
I've
sound
sold
amazing. You know,
some of
good for
the
you.
most terrible guitars.
To some of the
to
best
some
players.
of the best players. I think that only good players should play bad guitars
But
because they're the only ones who know what to do with
right.
it.
But some guys just, you know, they'll just take whatever. It's a good guitar. It stays in tune. I've used it for a million years. But you're like, oh, why don't you change the pickups? It's not fun. You know it has shitty pickups. Doesn't matter. They make
Doesn't
it sound
matter.
great.
To you, they're shitty, but
Well, they're not known to be
Beauty's
good
in the
pickups,
eye.
but they sound great on them.
beauty's in the eye.
So, like,
and also, like I said before, you can't grow the same tree twice. You
Right.
can't just because it's not good on one thing doesn't mean it's not good on another
right.
thing.
But you're
I've
always
seen.
like, oh, well, why don't you get Seymour Duncan's for it or something like that? Like, nah,
Yeah,
I'm good.
I've seen bad examples of guitars that are supposed to be good,
For sure.
and I've seen great examples of guitars that are supposed to suck.
That are
And
amazing.
like, who am I to say?
Right.
Who am I to tell you not to love your guitar?
Right. That's a
Right.
good way to look at it.
So,
But you're also there to go like, well, if you think it sounds good now, you know, there's certain things wrong with that guitar. Like you ever have that person who comes in and you're like,
I could make suggestions on how
Right.
you could even make your guitar even better.
you can make it stay in
possibly.
tune. You know, like
Yeah,
you,
I know a guy who can do
you
a
can make the
thing
thing say
to
it
possibly
too.
make it better,
Or
but
you
like,
can have it, or you know, get a, you know, have
But-
your frets stressed because your
you
guitar
know.
will. Because a lot of people, I know amazing players who don't know a thing about how the guitar works. They just play
Right.
great.
They just play
But
great.
they'll bring in their guitar and be like, wow,
don't
your
have
frets
to.
are all bashed in. You should probably have those dressed.
Yeah.
And they're like, I didn't, you know, like when we were young, I never heard of refretting a guitar or even dressing the frets. I remember we had dents in our frets and we thought it was
Right.
good.
Well, I almost
Like, we're kicking
feel
ass.
like some people shouldn't go down that path because that's
Right.
how you end up in the land of bad repairs. Is people
Oh,
who
yeah.
think they know how to fix their own stuff.
Oh, wait, that happens when people go in. I do my
God
own
bless
setups.
them.
You pick up that guitar,
God
like
bless them.
obviously.
Moss is laughing back there. Moss is
Yeah, because
laughing
everyone's
back
had
there.
that.
Because who has not gotten that?
Oh, I do my own
Who's done
setups. You
that?
pick up the guy's guitar and you're like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't. You should have someone really
I
do
mean,
it.
I love that phone call when someone's like, I tried to do my own
On
refret
repair.
and
Can
I
I
think
bring it
I
in?
might have messed it up. And I'm like, oh,
Their own
really?
refret. Oh, that's terrible. Or guys are bringing the guitar in a bag, like of parts. They're like, I took it apart, but I couldn't get it back together.
Yeah.
Like, really?
I'd rather you don't know anything about your guitar and bring it to a professional.
I don't-
It's like trying to do your
Right.
own heart surgery. Like, why?
I don't
would
do
you
it to my own
that?
guitars. I have a repair guy.
Yeah.
You know, like
I don't fix my.
I don't fix my own guitars. We
I
do
don't
not
fix
fix
my
our own
own
guitars.
guitars.
I don't fix my own guitars because
here to tell you not to fix
We don't do it.
your own
don't
guitars.
do it. Bring it to a
Take them
trained
to a
professional.
qualified
right.
professional.
Would you fix your own heart? Right.
Yeah.
Would you fix your own eye?
Yeah.
If you're having a problem with your
do
eye,
that.
would you go on the internet and try
Yeah.
to fix it? Some people
No.
probably do.
Well, it depends. No, for the most part, no.
Right. But fixing guitars, I mean, if you had someone train you to do it and you had some
If
experience,
that was
maybe.
your goal,
Right. But you always
was
get these
to
guys like,
be
oh, I do my own
somebody-
setups. You're like, cool.
if you are in, here's the thing: you need not just desire, but also talent, and
Have
that
talent,
is that applies across the board to
Totally.
any.
Well, some
anything
guys are
you
just
ever
good
do
at
well.
it. Some guys can
So,
measure
some
things.
People are, yeah,
But some people
have
just.
the touch.
I have a friend Bobby who worked with me at Chelsea years ago. He's passed away since, but Bobby Ross, he was a
Mm-hmm.
legend in our business. But you just hand him a guitar and he would just hand it back, and it just felt amazing. Any
Sure.
guitar. And the fellow Craig who works for me right now, my friend Craig, who works for me at Mountain Cat, he's the same way.
Yeah.
You know, like he went to one of those schools, but you don't really learn anything in those schools. He got a job at Chelsea because I was on vacation. Danny hired him. We
Sure.
needed a guy. He had no experience. He just went to that school. He just happened to walk in on the right day. Danny hired him on the spot.
And it worked.
And he's working in a vintage guitar shop. With,
Right.
And we're just throwing stuff at him, and he rose to it.
Yeah, well, desire,
He
but
had the
also talent.
You know, he just needed to learn some stuff. We sent him to some guys,
Yeah.
and people would show him stuff. But, like, he could, even then, just make a guitar play good.
And like people have asked me, you know, have you ever wanted to, like, why don't you?
Like, why don't you
have you
learn?
ever thought about? They think of it as like an upgrade or
Well, I
something.
already
Like,
meant to.
oh, shouldn't I be wanting to
I
fix
always
guitars?
meant to. I always meant to
I
be able
never
to learn
meant
to do a
to.
setup. I was too busy.
I
was dealing with
understand
these
physically
people.
what happens.
I know
when
how
you
to
do
turn a
setup.
truss rod. I could
and
do
I
it.
guess if I were, you know, under a gun and they were like, set up this guitar,
Right.
or everyone you love will die. I'm like, okay, I will
And that can
adjust
happen,
the truss
right?
rod,
That does happen.
and clean up the electronics. But
Right. I know how a truss rod
but
works. I could turn this truss rod in and put relief in this neck.
yeah,
You know,
I
like-
never.
I don't want to, though.
That was never
I was
my
like, screw that, you
purpose.
do it.
Like I ended up in such. So getting back to like how I ended up in this business,
Right.
it's such a circuitous path, and the parts of my brain and personality type that have been engaged are, like, I love people. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I do. I love people. I love meeting people, talking to them, and there's and who are the best people in the world, but like musicians come in and they're all. I've met so many interesting people this way. Like I couldn't even begin to explain my whole everything. I mean, that's you know,
it's the way
everyone,
what we do,
everybody,
right? Especially in New York City.
Yeah, especially in New York City.
I worked in a guitar shop right in the middle of Manhattan.
If I were somewhere else, I don't know if I would.
Just
like,
less
especially
people.
in New York City.
You know, there's probably the same situation,
Yeah.
but just not as many people, and
you
maybe
know,
not as many. They're not moving as quickly.
And
but New York has a lot of characters.
Yeah.
But so does everywhere else, but just probably less. I'm sure if you had a
Sure.
guitar shop in the middle of nowhere,
Yeah.
you'd have your characters
Well,
like
I mean,
we have.
like I said, in Kingston,
Yeah.
you got the leprechaun
Right.
lady. You know, there
Exactly.
are characters everywhere.
But we just have
But-
more of it here, and
Yeah.
people are a little more open. Nowadays, it's everywhere, but back then, especially, people were more open about being weird.
Also, everybody
back
comes
then.
through New York.
Everybody, yeah.
So every band from everywhere, every musician from everywhere
you'll meet
comes
them,
through New
right.
York, and I meet them, and it's wonderful. So there's that aspect of it.
Right.
I really
If you
do.
like music,
I live
right?
that. I
You're
love
gonna
that.
get to meet everybody you ever liked. You know, if they're still alive. You know.
Secondly, there is a part of my personality, and maybe this comes from the same place that my dad comes from with the records, that is a collector and an ardent researcher. So like I want to know everything. I want to know everything about it. I want to know what came before it. I want to know why. And I want to know, you know, what was in the pop culture trend at the time
Right.
that like caused them to even like go there.
Right.
Like I just
Well, that's part of. If you follow the progression
Yeah.
of guitars, you're basically following the history of the country,
yeah, it's true.
which is really interesting. Like why
if you
the
really
20s
go
guitars are
far
like that.
enough back, you follow
It's the whole history of the country.
not just
Not even the
with
country, right.
guitars. If you go far enough back, you follow the history of the world. You do. You follow the
Basically.
history from the oud
Right.
showing up in Europe, right? With the Moors, like that is.
Right. Things were moving around. Things became mutated. You know,
Yeah,
if you went to
and-
these tiny islands, they had their
and,
own instruments.
You know, and it just people influence other people.
Right.
People's cultures.
Well, everything
influence
comes from
other people's
somewhere.
cultures. Everything. Yeah, and.
You know, this comes from Europe. Like making a guitar like this comes from Europe.
Sure,
It's obviously
but
some type
it
of gigantic violin. You
Right,
know, like,
it comes from Europe, but more specifically, like it comes
Right.
from
A certain part of Europe,
Spain, and then before Spain, it
France
kind of came
or-
from. It kind of came from the middle because it, you know it
Right.
these things mutate. You know,
And people
the
traveled.
oud becomes the lute, becomes the guitar and the mandolin,
Right.
and you know
But
fretted
guitar is
stringed
interesting because it
instruments
really
that don't
mostly
even
happened
exist
in the
anymore.
last century. You know, like before the last century, like the 1800s, there were guitars, but they weren't really, not that many people really played them yet. You know, they
Well,
were
yeah, I
classical
mean,
guitars of anything, but
Well, it was a Spanish
right.
instrument.
Yeah,
So
more
it
people
was,
play tenor banjo probably.
It was a, you know, and the real big stringed instrument that led up to it obviously was the lute, right?
Right.
I mean, and, you know.
really then a banjo.
Well, the
was
banjo
way bigger.
Banjo is an interesting. I got really into this actually, like this particular history. Banjo is interesting. Banjo is derived from an African instrument, so
Directly?
it is.
That would make sense though.
Right, it is, you know, that
Came to this
concept of
country
like a
about that
skin
point.
over a rim
Right.
instrument and came to the United States. Banjo
Right.
was not something that spread in the same way as guitar in Europe. You find it in like
that's a good
Ireland and
point,
stuff
right.
like that.
That's
but
true.
guitar is something that mutated into itself in Europe, right?
And then came to-
The basic history being, and I think I said this a little bit, but you know, the oud ends up in Europe. It kind of mutates into the lute. There you have your first like fretted instrument, and the
Right.
frets are like tied
They
around.
move, right.
They move. They're
Moving
movable
frets.
frets. Yeah, and Then, and also simultaneously, you have the dagamba instruments of Europe that are also like, and we're talking violins, violas, viol da gamba, like that kind of stuff. And so you have some concepts that eventually meld together into something like this, right? But they're still separate, similar concepts.
I'm just looking over your shoulder because they're right there, but like those things. Yeah.
Because stringed instruments are a pretty universal concept. Most cultures have something with strings on it. So the direct origin of the idea of a stringed instrument, I mean, I guess it must go back to the harp, right? It's got to go back to the harp.
There might have been some before that. I mean, didn't Egyptians have some type of things that they were...
Right, exactly. I mean, the ancient...
Yeah, I think even like Egyptians, they had... Because people always danced, even they had to have music.
So the concept of a stringed instrument is pretty ancient, right? So these different... They come, but it's also an independent idea that comes up, right?
Right.
Like the banjo is not really related to the guitar, and yet they're similar in certain. They meld together.
Yeah,
they end up in the same.
They end up in the
melting
same
pot.
place,
It's kind of like how corned beef is considered Irish, even though it came from like Jewish delis.
I consider it Jewish deli.
But you know what
an Irish person would probably
it had to end up in the same room.
Because one person went from here to here. I said, you know what you do with the beef? You do this, and it's really good.
It has to end up in the same. So
it's always that one person.
So a lot of these instruments, so like banjo, is something that was in Africa. It came over
with
with enslaved populations.
Right, the 4-string ones, they're failing them.
In America, right?
Right.
And banjo in America was king, number one. What did Stephen Foster play?
Right, because they were loud.
A banjo. Because they were loud, because, there was no amplification, right?
That was really the thing.
They were loud.
Most guitar players played banjo.
And they just were what people...
But you could play them in a dance in a field party.
Yeah.
And they were loud enough.
Yeah,
Guitars weren't loud enough
They
yet.
weren't.
There was no dobros yet.
Guitars
nylon string.
They didn't, not nylon string, gut string.
Gut string, right.
Gut.
I know, that depresses me.
So like...
I was talking to Eric about this, and he said that their factories in the 1800s, where they made strings, had to be where the best sheep were.
Sure, of course.
And I was like, why?
Because the gut. Because you gotta get gut.
I know, but I love animals, so I still like to think that it didn't come from an animal.
Nylon doesn't exist until the 20th century.
I was like, so they put them where the best sheep were?
Yeah.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
I like animals, so I don't even want to think that comes from an animal, but it does.
Banjo is, that's a skinhead,
I know. That's depressing, but I found that so interesting.
That's totally different.
It was in this
That's a whole other thing. I don't think that it was like...
Because Eric knows exactly his whole family's history. Because we did a podcast with him. He has pictures of every factory. Sure. One of them was destroyed by a mudslide.
That's awesome.
These were in the hills of Italy.
Sure.
And he has pictures of all of them. And then the thing came up with the sheep. I was like, oh, that's right.
Yeah.
That's where the guts come from.
Yeah.
But he's like, oh yeah.
Have you ever played a real gut string?
Yeah, but I don't. It's like one of those things, like real tortoiseshell picks.
I think it's fine. Some people will get really jazzed about it. They're like, oh my god, nothing will do but a gut string. It's like, it gets a little splintery.
Well, it's like real tortoiseshell picks. They do sound different.
They sound
really good, but it comes from a tortoise. I like tortoises. So.
That's also illegal. Gut string is not illegal.
No.
Tortoise shell is illegal.
Right, but you still get it. But, that was one thing.
I don't know anybody who gets it.
Me either, but we do. But the G. Smith would do that. He would go through the cases when they came in. We'd always get tons of stuff, and he would be like, "Oh, you mind if I go through the cases?" He was always looking for not really anything of value because it wasn't. But Danny would let him take the tortoiseshell picks.
Sure, yeah.
He'd be like, "These sound different," and then you get one, and you're like, "Yeah, they sound different." Do you have to have one? No, but it does. It's a thing.
What's funny? I barely use the pick.
Oh, really?
I'm surrounded by... I could get any pick I want, probably for free. It's just not how I am like... There it is. I am like this. It's not... I do a combo, finger pick, and then I'll get right in there with my nail.
I play with like a pick and my fingers. But for years I didn't have a pick. I just had a really long thumbnail.
Yeah, that's pretty... I don't do the thumb. I'm terrible. I have to take special care of my nails so I don't rip them off.
I studied classical guitar, and my teacher was like, if I had your nails, I would have been famous. He's like, these things
If I had your nails, I'd be famous.
He really used to say
now.
that because he used to file them for me. Like, like before you know how to file them properly.
sounds
He'd be
like a
like,
scene.
give me your hand. Well, it's, a classical conservatory,
Yeah,
So
sure.
he's like, let me see your hand. He's like, oh, horrible. I need to show you how to do your nails properly.
Yeah.
Because those guys used to carve ping pong balls. But the only things that sound like your nail, they would cut the ping pong
Sure.
ball and put it on their finger. And he was a performing classical guitar player, but he'd had hand problems because he wore the thing on his hand. So, but he said, man, if I had nails like this, it would have been a whole different story.
Yeah.
Because mine are really hard. I don't know why. I've never had a cavity, whatever that is. I've strong, whatever.
Good
But
for you, man.
hey, it's not all good, but I got good nails.
And your hair is so beautiful.
And I have fabulous
and
hair and it's
luscious and long.
fluffy.
God,
but I
you
do have
smoke
good
great
nails.
too, so.
Thank you. We try. It's our podcast thing. We try to make everybody happy.
So
But
what the heck was I talking about?
that really, history
Oh, yeah, we were
guitars to
talking about
nails
history.
to hair.
Okay, so
That was an interesting one.
right, so
Okay. We're covering a lot of ground.
so the lute ends up being the fad in Europe, right? And it ends up kind of all over different. It goes to all the different
Classical music
countries,
was played
and
on
it
guitars
evolves
in
into
the
these different.
1800s, 1700s.
What's that?
Classical guitar was played in Europe in.
I think it was developed. I might sound really dumb. I feel like it was developed in the 18th century as we
Somewhere around
kind
there,
of
right.
understand it. There certainly are examples by the 19th century of.
Yeah, do they know who made the first class? Like,
They came out of the.
Someone
they
must know
came
that,
out of
right.
Spain, out of the caves in Spain.
Right.
Basically, what's that?
Chorus.
Torres. Thank you,
boom.
Torres.
And what year?
Mas
Mas, what year
with
is
the
that?
information.
That's Mas Hino. Come out here, Mas.
What year was that? What year was
Come
that?
join the
Mas?
conversation.
What year was that, Mas?
18.
Yo, I just want to see how
18
Shira got to
18
retrofret.
something
I know
different,
Oh, so
up to.
it's even later than
Who's
I
you?
thought. Okay. So anyhow,
Anyhow.
we're not doing a.
Well, it's not
I
the
am
history
not
of
a
the guitar.
historian, but we are doing a brief brush up on what I think I know about the guitar. So, so then that instrument makes its way around Europe. It's a big fad, big in pop music, and it gets adapted into these instruments that we still know and play. The
Right.
mandolin in Italy, right?
Right.
Because they're making violins.
bowlbacks, yeah, and all that stuff.
Well, the bowback comes from the lute
Right.
aspect, right? But the
That comes from
that style of building
Strummers
kind of
make
comes
a
from a
guitar.
violin tradition. So they're making the mandolin, which is also like tuned like a violin.
Right.
Right. And in Spain, it turns into
They have a
the
lot
guitar.
of other things, right? And they have a lot of other
There's a lot of
instruments in
other-
Spain. They have those quattros and all that crazy
Sure.
stuff.
There are other instruments that are developed that don't catch on in the same way.
Right.
But those are probably the two biggest instruments. And the ukulele technically comes out of Portugal, but
Portugal?
yeah, it was a Portuguese instrument.
Never knew that.
Yeah, it ended up in Hawaii
I did
with
that
the
thing,
people
right.
working in the taro patches, Portuguese immigrants in Hawaii,
Interesting.
working in the taro patches, and that's why it's called like the taro patch. There is a
That's right.
there's a ukulele called taro patch, but ukulele is a Hawaiian word that means like fingers, like little
Little fingers.
no fingers fast like little fleas or something like that. Fingers jumping like fleas.
Interesting. I never knew that.
I might be botching that a little bit. It's that's the concept of
Makes sense.
the translation, and it originally was Portuguese, which makes sense. I mean, Portugal's
Yeah,
right
well,
next
people
to
were
Spain.
traveling, everyone had boats, people
So it's
were moving
probably
around. right.
probably like just an extension, basically, of the guitar.
Yeah,
It was
people-
called
yeah.
actually like whatever the word for like little tiny guitar,
Right.
guitar on cita or something.
Right. Makes sense.
So anyhow, so that all ends up eventually in the United States. And like the thing about the guitar though is that unlike the mandolin, it's an instrument that starts being built in other countries in Europe before it comes to the United States. Germany,
Right.
They in Vienna they start making guitars in kind of their own style. You see all
Right.
these Viennese guitars. They have like the ice cream cone heel.
Right. Very fancy.
Very
looking.
fancy, very fancy, smaller guitars.
Right.
So you have this guitar that is morphed, that is now from something else, from the lute, which is morphed from the oud, and then that itself starts to morph, right? And that's the story of the guitar. It's an instrument that came from something else that turns into something else, but still retains its original identity as the guitar, because as we know, there are still guitars being made in the same places in Spain.
Right.
For the same types of music that it was built for initially. It's still a very living tradition in Spain. It's not the past, it's the present and the
there's
future.
like little villages that make it.
It's the present
Everyone in the
and
village
the future.
makes a guitar.
So
You
you
can go there
still
and buy
have
one,
that
right?
solid, Spanish guitar building tradition.
Right.
The Viennese tradition, that
Not as
morphed.
much, right?
That kind of morphed, and there still is, there's still, in the 20th century, has been a lot of German guitars and guitar building and Hofner and Hoyer and all these places, but so this guitar turns into a couple of things and then comes to America, and
Where we come in. Yeah.
and in America it's actually one of these German immigrants, guitar building German immigrants who comes here, the Martin family.
Winds up in New York City.
Martin, and he ends up, those first Martin guitars they are reminiscent of that Viennese
you can
style.
See that thing,
You can see it,
Those,
and even now, the
1890
heel
Martin.
on the Martin comes to that little
That
neat
you can see they
little
had that
point,
the thing back here.
and I think, and the back of the headstock, exactly. So there are still aspects of that guitar that retain
those New
kind
York
of that
Martins, they call
identity
them,
it came from that Viennese guitar tradition. I'm just going to call it that. It covers kind of a larger
It's pretty thorough.
Austro-German area. But so that comes to America, and then it isn't until the 20th century that you finally end up with the right type of bracing to have the steel string flat top guitar, and away we go. And then but the thing about guitar in America, it's people coming into a room together where they would not have otherwise been. Like, you have your Italian guitar building tradition, right? Here we are, and that is still, I find, always, it's reminiscent of it harkens back to a violin tradition.
You can see it.
You can see it.
You can see where it came from.
Yeah, the cantilever, the F holes.
Yeah, and this is the 30s.
Even the color.
This is 1936. The guitar looks like this.
Yeah.
So,
and it's in New York that you get these different
was all in New York. The only thing that wasn't in New York was Gibson.
Bringing their own traditions.
Like, what wasn't in New York?
Gibson's a whole other
right. How did you wind up in Michigan?
Right,
but Martin was in New York. Gretsch was in New York. Epipho was in New York. These guys were in New York.
Yeah, everybody
started here and went to other places.
A lot of people
Guild, Epipho,
started in New York,
and then they left as they needed bigger space. Like Guild was downtown, so was Epipho.
Yeah, well, I think that Martin was just didn't like the city
or he needed space.
Yeah, and
his
cousin.
Space.
I think his cousin went out to Pennsylvania and was like, "It's beautiful
it's
here. It's
awesome.
like
You
home.
get space for nothing, right? And it looked like home, right?
It's like home. It's like cows and trees.
But they eventually all left. Guild was in Little Italy
Who
because they
can
were
afford New York?
Italian, so they went to Hoboken.
Who can afford New York?
No one after a while.
Nobody.
That everyone leaves. Fred Gretsch was in Brooklyn. There was nothing in Brooklyn yet, really. So he had the Fred Gretsch building, which is a pretty cool building. And that's where all that. I think he had a second building at some point. It wasn't just that one. I think there were two.
Yeah.
But now the Gretsch building is condos.
Well, yeah.
Which is cool because we used to drive over the Williamsburg Bridge and be like,
condos.
right. But at least they called it the Gretsch building.
Yeah, at least they called it the Gretsch building.
I was like, oh, we should live in the Gretsch building.
But I mean, there are still. Well, I have to give it to Carbonetti. He is continuing an Italian guitar building tradition in New York.
No doubt. So we'll do that in a second. So, and then we got a bunch of other special guests.
So, but the banjo, okay, now I'll do a really quick wrap up on the banjo. The banjo comes over from Africa. It is #1 top dog instrument in America as far as folk and pop music, jazz, early jazz.
Yeah.
Basically, it gets fancier and fancier and fancier and fancier and fancier. It's very big in vaudeville. Right?
It was loud too.
And it's very loud. This is
stages,
before we have
before
amplification.
Resonator guitar,
right? And I think the moment that kills the banjo and puts the guitar ahead is the stock crash of 1929. right? Great Depression. Banjo is an incredibly fancy instrument. It's covered in plating and abalone inlays and ivory, and it's really fancy. It's the fanciest thing. It's very expensive. They're very heavy and a lot of metal.
That's true, actually. It's
you know
half
what
a
I
drum.
mean? And when you think of a guitar, like I said before,
right.
it's a wooden box with strings on it. And now the guitar technology has...
It's getting louder. That's what I always
it's
thought.
caught up.
The guitar just had to get as loud.
The guitar has caught up just in time
for blues players
it to come out ahead.
Right.
Because if you are a poor sharecropper in the 30s,
right.
you're not going to buy... You might have bought a banjo.
Right, before that. Right.
Before that.
Right.
But now there are cheap guitars that are loud, and you buy a guitar.
And you play at your party. It was all about playing parties
People
back
who
then.
might have otherwise started on a banjo now start on the guitar.
Right.
And the banjo never recovered.
It got a fifth string and bluegrass came out.
But I mean, I'm talking number one top dog everything.
A guitar is way
banjo
more
on jazz, banjo in folk, banjo in
Roy Smith,
vaudeville.
all those guys played banjo and
everybody
guitar.
played the banjo. It was in every orchestra. It's in every band, and that's why you see so many banjos that are from like the 20s,
right? And used shops,
and like a fancy. Like, have you seen any fancy do you see? I'm sure they must exist, but do you see many fancy banjos from the 30s?
No, well, nothing gets fancy after that.
Sure, yeah.
For a while, everything's cool,
right?
Because even National Steels weren't steel for a while. Gibson didn't have metal for truss rods.
Yeah, I mean,
like everything changes in those years.
Economics,
the 40s, World War II
driver
starts.
Of that.
Right.
So,
first it's the Depression, and then it's World War II. That's why I said
the Great Depression.
You can go through the whole history of the country by the guitars.
Yeah, exactly.
Starting at a certain point, but it really, how the immigrants came here, landed in New York City, headed out to the rest of the country. It's the whole history of the country and manufacturing.
Yeah, it's true. It's
true. Like that's what I always saw it as. It's like if you follow the history of anything that's manufactured. Now, I'm sure other people say that about their businesses too. I'm sure it's the same with a sewing machine or something. But
and you can see also with guitars as time goes on, then the development of the electric
but look
guitar.
at the 60s. Those guitars look like the 60s.
Right, the explosion of guitar production
the Art Deco
in the
guitars in the
60s.
40s and these guitars,
and then a more mass market approach overseas building in the 70s.
Yeah.
And this is not just the story of the guitar, this is the story of America, of manufacturing in America, of how
that's why I always look at it.
things have always been
if you study these, you'll study the whole history of the country.
Yeah, because
starting at a certain point.
The thing is, the cheapest guitar that you could get in 1950 would have been made in like Chicago, right?
Yeah, in Harmony or one of those.
Yeah, and it would have been
sold through a catalog.
It would have been like in 1960, right? You would have gotten your Stella flat top.
Probably at a mail order joint.
Mail order guitar, right?
Unless you lived in a city.
Right, exactly.
You had to maybe go to a Five and Dime. Maybe they would have a guitar or a way to get you one.
The thing about that guitar is, even though at the time it is the cheapest, like bottom of the barrel guitar you could get, it's still made in America.
And they were made well.
Well,
that guitar, it's like
not as well as this one.
No, but
it is made in America.
But you could buy an old K like that. That was probably like a $3 guitar back then.
Sure.
They sound better than most guitars now. Like, just they didn't make crappy stuff back then.
They
must have, but
I would challenge you to. I'm sure I could find a guitar that sounds better than that K. But that being said, a cheap guitar now would never be made in America. It would not be made in America.
It can't be. Right.
Every guitar that is made in America now is like, that's the high end.
Right.
Right.
Generally,
just that alone.
That's why everyone goes to China
end.
now and makes these things.
Yeah, I mean, production is all over
what it is.
the world.
People are always going to go where it's cheap, but
yeah.
like all those Korean-made Epiphone guitars. Those were great guitars.
Those are cool guitars.
They're cheap.
I like the Korean Danos actually.
They were great.
Yeah, they're cool
that was great guitar building.
And I'm not saying that there are not cool. I love a cheap thrill guitar.
Right.
To this day, I love a cheap thrill guitar. And like, I love. Okay, this is a fun, like, question or thought for someone who has sold many guitars. Don't you love the idea of having sold someone their first guitar?
I saw a lot of people their first guitar.
I love that. I think about that. I think about that sometimes.
I think about the guy who sold me mine.
Whose whose mind got completely developed by that guitar.
Well, I know people who are famous now who
got in touch with
would hang out at Chelsea as little kids, and we gave them their first guitar for free.
Yeah, I love that story. And you know what? So getting back to how I came up, First Flight. So like that's where I started, and that was totally the vibe of our business. We were definitely a mom and pop shop. Big wall of accessories, lots of accessories.
Yeah, I remember
lots
that.
of things.
I lived near
fully stocked Hosa wall, fully stocked wall of strings, fully stocked, all parts, like all of it. Just like little things, all the different picks. And definitely that place you'd go and get like your first guitar.
Yeah, it was like that.
You
wouldn't go to Rudy's and buy your first guitar.
Right, but it was that that type of place, right?
But that was like a real...
The thing about that is that we'd have a lot of that kind of stuff. And we'd also have like a few genuinely really cool pieces.
Right.
Unexpected pieces.
Well, I used to walk by the window and look up, and be like,
so we'd have,
oh, cool, Dan Armstrong.
On one hand, we'd have your Squire, right? And on the other hand, we'd have like, I don't know, a Maple Cap Telly, right? That's fun. Like, we'd have these different kind of levels of guitar there. So I really learned from the bottom to the top.
Yeah, that's a great shop for that.
It was a really good shop to get that type of education.
Right.
Because I learned...
Because if you just work at a high-end shop, all you're going to see is high-end guitars.
Yeah, exactly. Because I learned to be open-minded about lower-end guitars. I also learned to, like, love any guitar, kind of. I could see the value in why people would love certain guitars. So
the thing is, now people have caught on to the cheap guitars because now everyone buys the old cheaper vintage guitars. Which years ago you can get
I feel like I'm almost like partly
responsible for that.
For that.
That's like Mojo now. That's like what guys have
crazy.
a fetish for now. It's like cool old cheap guitars. Anyone can buy a cool old expensive guitar.
I love cheap thrill. I love cheap thrill guitar. A Harmony, a Hagstrom, a Vox, like. Sure, yeah. I have
some of those are really cool. That's why I have one that's a gold foil.
I have like a problem actually.
Well, you can buy lots of those.
I have bought lots of them.
Right.
Like I have like 3 too many H49s.
Right.
Yeah, like a Hagstrom bass over there. Exactly.
Boom. Exactly. That thing.
Exactly.
You could play in a band with that thing. Guys in the 60s did. Look at every band. People had that bass.
Sure, yeah.
It was in Europe. Those
so
guys.
I do. I love a cheap throw.
Right, but those things sound great. Plug it into an old amp, and it has sound of every record you listen to.
I developed that sensibility.
Right. Danny was into that at Chelsea, like weird stuff that no one was hip to yet, like panoramic amps. Like this pitch shifting by brows. No one was hip to those. Danny was hip to those early on before anyone. He was into Lonnie Mack and all that stuff, and those guys used all those things. But we would have them at Chelsea for years. No one ever looked at them. And then within the course of 6 months, they all sold. Neil Young bought one. Pete Townsend bought 2 of them. Yeah. Because Robert Cray started using them again.
Yeah, these trends develop. We actually.
And that's what happens.
I don't want to be too name trappy, but I do have like a funny
kind of name
story.
Just the internet.
Okay, so it's just the internet.
And many, many other places.
This is a very old story. This is not somebody recently.
No one looks at the internet anyway, so it's not the big deal.
So, I have a yen for, and First Flight in general kind of had a yen for the set neck, Gaiatone, like late 50s Japanese guitars.
Danny liked those too. He was hip to those before anybody. Yeah,
those are cool. I have a couple of those in my own personal.
I didn't care about those, but Danny was hip to those, but before everybody else was. He was buying them.
So we had those. We had, the L, mostly like Gaiatone, like the LG series, a couple of different types of those. And John Bryan is really into those guitars. He's a big producer. And he's done a lot of amazing work. He's worked with like Fiona Apple and some of my favorite records. He made that great Sean Lennon record a couple of years ago. Anyhow, so he loves those guitars and uses them publicly a lot. And publicly you'll see him using one of those guitars a lot. And they kind of caught on as a little trend. And then this one time he ended, I don't know if Moss was there for this, but because I used to work with Moss at First Flight.
It's so funny how these things come around.
He ended up at the shop at First Flight. And
come join us, Moss?
Yeah, come on over, Moss.
We should have people some
Moss is
because we have a bunch of people in there who are going to join us shortly. So I just wanted to. We still have a lot of ground to cover with you, so I don't think this is going to be our last podcast.
We had one, and the prices on these were creeping up, and he asked Dan, the owner, you know, why is this guitar so expensive? Like, I used to get these for so cheap. Yeah, and that is exactly what he said. He was like, it's your fault.
Right. It happened to me with the bass player in the Black Rose.
Guitar.
Used one of those Les Paul recording basses in a video. Yeah. And he came in the store and he's like, do you have any recording basses? I'm like, no, because of you.
Yeah.
He's like, I know, I can't get it anymore. He's like, I didn't realize that was going to happen.
They get indignant, like, how dare this be more expensive? And it's like,
but I love that band, so I knew he played it, but people were starting to ask for them. Like, the Black Rose did the same thing with the Fender 12-string guitar. No one cared about that Fender Electric 12.
And all
of a sudden, one guy starts using it in a video. Back then, it was like a video. And someone didn't even have to use it on the record. Yeah. People would see it in the video, and everyone, and people, you know, it was like Vintage Guitar Magazine was like that because there was nothing else. Like when the one guy wrote the article, it was a joke. Someone said that Purple Marshall sounded better, and someone would come into the store and be like, "Do you have any Purple Marshalls?" And be like, "Dude, that was a joke. It's just Tolex. It doesn't have a sound." Yeah. But stuff like that. Now there's an internet, so all kinds of shit could happen like that. But people get these things where these things sound better. But the guy said Purple Marshall sounded better because he had a bunch of them, and he was but it was tongue in cheek. Wait, secretly they sound so much better. But
they're louder.
It's the purple dye gets into the speaker and makes it purple.
The purple actually changes.
It changes
the
Ohm's
weight
law
of the paper.
Completely, right?
Right. It changes the what it does. It changes the weight of the paper, so it shakes at like a different frequency.
Right. And Jeff Beck knew that, right? Everybody, Purple Marshall. but some guy said it like that.
Every pigment will sound different.
Yeah, every pigment sounds different.
But everything sounds different.
Yeah, everything
sounds like, PAFs. Yeah, they're different. They were made in 1959.
It needs to be played, I think.
That too.
Right.
Like,
that's why
that's the question. Like, does a 50s guitar sound amazing in the 50s? Listen to what Buddy Holly wrote. Playing a 50s Strat. It's the 50s. That was a new guitar. Sounds fucking awesome. It's playing it through a Fender amp.
That's why if you get one of those like emerald green guilds, they sound better than the red ones.
Why?
Because the green.
Because the green, right? I thought you were going to tell me like something I didn't know. Of course they sound better, right?
Because of the green.
Right, because they're green.
It's that green pigment.
Right.
That's it.
See? It's more natural, I think.
Right. Well, it's right because it comes from a tree.
Yeah.
Right. Then like Candy Apple Red doesn't come from a tree.
It's closer to the earth.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing. But that's why I think PAF sound different. Like you have this conversation every time you talk about guitars, but like why do PAF sound different? They certainly do. There's no doubt that they sound different.
Well, there are actual reasons for that, but
right. But you can take one apart.
It's because of the pigment.
Right. It's because of some magical thing. But it also was made a long time ago. So, well, everybody's here. Everyone's here, right? So do you want to open it up to other folks?
Sure. So wait,
we're in the middle of something?
Well, I haven't gotten to working at first.
I know, I was just thinking that.
So I had a bunch of experience in that, and then basically I got a phone call one day from Retrofret, and they were like, come work for us.
Really? They recruited you?
Yeah.
Out of another guitar shop?
That is what happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's unusual, I think.
It was out of the blue.
Yeah. Maybe Dan put a good word.
I'm sure somebody must have put in a good word. Yeah. Although I had met various people at the shop, including like Peter, and I had had some pretty in-depth conversations with Peter about like arch top, you know, like the cave-in on a mandolin. Right. Like I had had some pretty in-depth.
But you didn't go to Retrofret and fill out a
nitty-gritty, nitpicky. I can't talk.
But they approached you, obviously. You know, like they approached you because it's usually the other way around, really. You know, like
I literally just got a phone call.
That's pretty awesome.
And they were like, "Come work for us." And it was actually right before Christmas. It was like October, which in retail means right before Christmas. And after all that time, I knew that if I had like bailed, just walked out on first flight, it would have been unkind. It would have been like really, you know, because I was like. It would have been right before Christmas.
Oh, you kicked it.
And
you do
I basically would have been like, well, that's your problem.
Especially somewhere you like the guy who worked there for so long. Because I went from 30th Street, from Chelsea Guitars to 30th Street.
Yeah.
It was 7 blocks away. But you have to do it the right way.
Like initially they were like, come work for us, and I was like, well, I can, but you have to give me enough time to like wrap up this season.
Right.
This is a big
But
part
that's
of
fair.
this business, and
That's
I
the
don't
way
want
it's
to leave
done,
them.
right.
You know, so I did not come to work full time at Retrofret immediately.
Right. But that's a
You know,
hard move
I
too. You have to
gave
tell
them,
Dan
like
that,
2
right?
months. I gave him like 2 months.
Yeah, I gave a month.
Notice.
You know, like,
And
and I said I wouldn't leave until they were comfortable with it. You know,
And like,
I had to give
it was
Rudy
nothing.
2 year.
2 years notice.
Yeah.
What? I got a new job.
He's
I'll start
still
in 2.
on notice. He's
Yeah,
like,
you're still working there.
he's
So
still
really,
He gets a paycheck every week.
Also because I had to
Rudy.
move to Japan.
Oh,
And
yeah. So-
and Rudy goes, you have to give 2
Years notice.
because I have so much stuff
right.
done.
Like, oh, that's fair.
Well, the customer's gonna be like mad.
Hey, Bob, you want to join us?
Night, Bob.
All right.
Hey, this is Daniel, and that's the end of episode 3 of season 2 of the Mountain Cat Guitars podcast. We didn't have a formal end to this one because some friends walked in, and that will be episode 4 next week with Night Bob, Josh from Protocaster, Shira Goldberg sticks around, Masino pops in, and of course, Doug Meyer of Mountain Cat Guitars. See you next week.